with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Lydia DePillis, writer with ProPublica, on how Trump's political employees will end up in Joe Biden's administration. Meanwhile, U.S. now breaking COVID infections daily. Near 2,600 people died yesterday, and it's going to get worse. Trump administration underbought vaccinations, and U.S. is likely to face shortages. White House weighs in on stimulus, offers to cut enhanced unemployment for a one-time Trump buck. Meanwhile, the House passes veto-proof $740 billion for defense. Now on to the Senate. The Supreme Court rejects Pennsylvania vote challenge, but the Republican election deniers carry on. Joe Biden picks Marcia Fudge for HUD despite her agriculture background. Does so probably to make way for dairy lobbyists. Democratic Richie Neal blocking legislation to protect us from surprise medical billing. More revelations of possible insidery trading by Kelly Loeffler. And the Senate looking to thwart a massive arms sales to the UAE. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Pleasure to have you. And with me, as is the norm, Emma Vigeland. Emma, how are you today?
I am well, Sam. It seems like it's about to start snowing here in New York. So
yes. In fact, I think flurries have already begun. This is coming after the warmest November in the history of the world. And
despite
this year,
weather patterns usually suggesting that this year, due to currents and El Nino or something like that, I don't really understand it, but it was supposed to be cooler, but yet it's even warmer.
Yeah, this
records all over the place.
Yes, this year could still very well end up being the warmest on record. I mean, that is one of the things that sort of just looms in the background is that every day the clock ticks even more, and we of course have had absolutely no progress, at least in terms of our government's willingness to engage in fighting climate change. Obviously, if anything, it's gone backwards. We may have lower emissions because of some slowdown in economic activity, but beyond that, nothing. And one of the things, and we'll get to this later in the program, Marcia Fudge was tapped by Joe Biden to take over HUD, and she had said, weeks ago, that she had registered her frustration that HUD was basically the consolation prize that they would give to provide diversity in an administration. And then there you have it. She sits on the Agriculture Committee, and the folks were hoping that not only would the Ag Committee, would the USDA, head of the USDA, or the agriculture secretary, would be a position that would deal with ag policy, but would also emphasize the nutritional aspects of it, SNAP, food security for people, and climate change. And it appears that Joe Biden is going to go with Tom Vilsack, who had that position under the Obama administration. As far as I can tell from a agricultural perspective, farmers were not terribly happy with his time there. And of course, he's just coming out of I think it is a 5 or 6, maybe 8-year stint as a lobbyist for the dairy industry. So there is some consternation about that pick amongst Democrats. And
although Fudge's appointment actually leaves an open congressional seat there in Ohio, and people are speculating that Nina Turner of the Bernie Sanders orbit and of the campaign could run for that seat, which would be very consequential.
Yes. And it still would have been open if she had been put in the agriculture position.
True. I'm just maybe I'm
you're looking for some silver lining.
I'm looking for some silver lining as it's silver outside, about to snow. I love the first snow. It's got me in a good mood.
Well, I hope I will not bring you down more with this, as we have a situation in the Senate, essentially, where for some reason, this country cannot seem to respond to the economic devastation that it is facing at the end of this month in terms of unemployment, or I should say the economic devastation of its citizens. When 12 million people are going to be thrown off of unemployment insurance, where we have millions who are going to be unprotected in terms of eviction moratoriums. A month later, we're going to have the end of the moratorium on student loan debt, I should say. And we still have Mitch McConnell insisting upon full immunity for corporations and for institutions for subjecting their workers or their customers or their members to unnecessary risks during this time by cutting corners on safety measures in an era of COVID. Meanwhile, the House, and I imagine the Senate, is going to follow suit. We just don't know if it'll be veto-proof in the Senate. The House overwhelmingly passes a $740 billion defense bill, like a walk in the park.
Like it was nothing, and Trump's threatening to veto it because it doesn't get rid of Section 230, which is his new pet project.
And there's other, Section 230 aside, because it's a controversial provision. But this is 335 to 78. You cannot veto that out of the House. We'll see what happens in the Senate. But here is Bernie Sanders, who is also agitating and the White House came in with a proposal last night to provide one-time Trump bucks. I think it was $1,200 for a couple, or $600 per person, or maybe
$600 per person, $600 for a child,
and $600 for a child. And not sure I don't know if we know specifically what the cutoff would be in terms of income, but that would be a one-time payment, as opposed to 3 or 4 months and they basically got rid of 3 or 4 months of expanded unemployment insurance, and also unemployment insurance that covers people who are independent contractors. And Bernie Sanders and some other members of the Democratic Senate, I think also they're joined by Josh Hawley, have said they want a $1,200 payment on top of the unemployment expanded unemployment benefits. And
it initially appeared like the Trump administration was responding positively and joining Hawley and Sanders in this more progressive fight for a payment to Americans, even though it was half of what was initially received. But then they go, of course, actually, that means we'll push that forward, but you're not getting any federal money for unemployment insurance.
Right. And I mean, I think they have 40 billion in there, but it's not nearly enough. I mean, I think
Not
it's
enough.
very anemic.
Yeah.
And I think from Trump's perspective, it's like he's still thinking about whatever it is he's going to do after president. And I'm happy to have, I mean, you can almost smell the thinking here, right? I'm happy to have people have a check with my name on it, A, which won't happen if it's unemployment insurance, and B, like, I don't care about the losers. I don't care about it. They lost their job. They lost their job. But here's Bernie Sanders on MSNBC making the point that it is stunning that we have the ability to pass a $740 billion military budget without batting an eye, but actually providing economic relief to people in the middle of a pandemic is even remotely controversial.
You know, Stephanie, I always get a kick. Here in Washington, when we go to war, there's endless amounts of money. Tax breaks for billionaires, endless amounts of money. Corporate welfare, endless amounts of money. When children are going hungry in America today, suddenly we don't have enough money. That's crap. That's wrong. And if we have got to stay here throughout Christmas, which is the last thing in the world that I would want to do, we are going to stay here because we are going to make sure that struggling working families in this country get the help they desperately need.
That's crap.
I was going to say.
Got to add that to the soundboard.
It is. We do need to pull that. Pull that for me, Matt. I want to use that crap. But it is. I mean, you know, sometimes we get involved in this, and it is about the fights that are happening, and we sort of accept the premise that the Republicans are, you know, they're simply fundamentally against the idea of helping people. But this basic premise, which has been true for decades, regardless of who is in power, the ability for our government and our society to get behind spending enormous amounts of money to either kill people or to grab resources or to just maintain the instrument to do that, ultimately, to maintain the threat that we can do that, versus our ability to provide for people in need, is just, it's stunning.
Well, it's upheld by this cult of individualism that's so ingrained in our culture, and then it's just justified by the institutions that we put in place there, right? So, I mean, College for All, for example, that was the same cost as the military budget increase in just one division that Trump was proposing just 2 years ago. It's very cheap based on what our government spends on a yearly basis. And this is a prime example of it. McConnell is pushing for austerity. All he cares about is the liability shield, the protections for corporations, the protections for employers. He doesn't even want to do any extension of unemployment insurance if it was his way, or he doesn't want any stimulus. I mean, that's not even in the compromise bill that Pelosi is pushing now. So we have all of these moving parts. Without Trump's ego involved, and when it's Biden as president, if we have a Republican majority still, I think it's going to be very hard to get those checks. But if the Georgian Senate runoffs go the Democrats' way, and then it's a 50-50 split with Harris as the tiebreaker, okay, potentially we could be getting those stimulus checks. There's so many moving parts, but there is one thing in Democrats' favor right now, between now and Inauguration Day, is Trump's desire to have another round of checks go out with Donald J. Trump in massive bold lettering in his signature on the bottom.
Yes. I mean, right now, if I was in the Senate, I would be floating the idea of putting his picture on these checks.
Yes. Send them out in just coins, tokens with his weird face on it.
You want to call them Trump bucks? Let's call them Trump bucks.
Do it.
I imagine, it would be shameless, but I actually think it would be effective. I would like to see Senator Sanders get on the floor of the Senate and say, I propose that we call these Trump bucks, and we propose and propose that we call the extension of unemployment benefits, Trump benefits.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Pelosi and Schumer's heads would explode because there seems to be some evidence that the checks with his name on it did did have some political
If he wants to
effect.
run in 2024, let's deal with it then. But
Yeah.
it really does put in stark relief how crucial this election in Georgia is. And I don't want people to mistake what I'm saying here. Georgia, those two, the election of those two members of the Senate in Georgia will mean an ability of Joe Biden to appoint judges. It'll mean an ability for Joe Biden to get his cabinet in place in a timely fashion. And most importantly, and I don't think it goes beyond this very much at all, because you're going to have Joe Manchin and Kelly and a bunch of them standing in the way of any type of like real progressive legislation. But what it will do is it will allow at least a one-time bite at an apple via reconciliation on a massive stimulus bill. Stimulus, relief, whatever you want to call it, infrastructure, any type of government spending can be rolled into that reconciliation bill, and it can be a total one-off. And then see you again next year if the Democrats are so inclined. But Georgia is hugely important, and it's frustrating because there's only so much we can do. And I think those Georgian Senate races, they want to keep it localized to a certain extent. Although I imagine that they accept your support in any way you can, but we shall see. Meantime, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to Lydia DePillis from ProPublica on her piece on how Trump's political employees will end up in Joe Biden's administration. Before we do, just want to give you a heads up on this. This has been really great, particularly. I imagine this would be just as good, but the things like this get heightened during this era, without a doubt. Literati Kids has a book club for children's ages 0 to 12. Each club has an age-appropriate selections of books that are tailored to what your child needs. And what's awesome about this, they send you a box of books. I don't know, like 4 or 5. I think we got 6 maybe. And first of all, kids love getting packages, which is one thing, particularly when they're addressed to them. And I've been through this with my first kid. Kids like different books. I get a list, from some parents of like books that the kids have to read. But then once you blow through that, you don't know what to get them. And the thing I like about this is that I can open up the box for Saul. I can show it to him and I can say, which one of these do you like? And then I always basically tell him, like, you get to pick 3 and I get to pick 1. If there's more that he likes, I'll do that. But it's always like I end up seeing a book that he doesn't necessarily into. And that's the way I get it for him. And it's they are obviously experts at curating these books. You can get a gift subscription for 1, 3, 6, or 12 months of books. And inside the box also comes like, stickers and
fun.
What is it? Artwork, but stuff to draw in. I don't even know what that means.
Stencils?
Not stencils, but like crayons. It's stuff to draw, like craft work and stuff.
Okay, fun.
But he loves it. And kids, I don't know why kids love stickers so much, but they do. It really has been great. And we found some books that he really likes. And there's nothing more gratifying than seeing your kid read and enjoy it. It is, I'm always on the edge with that. But, my kids will dip in occasionally. They'll start reading. And it's like literally you want to weep. Go to literati.com. This is also a great gift for if you've got nieces or nephews, I guess, or grandkids. But it's a great gift for your own kids, which is, sort of one of those things that also ends up being a gift for yourself in some way. Go to literati.com/majority for 25% off your first 2 orders. Pick your kids' book club gift today. Remember, no one else has kids' book clubs like these. Only at literati.com. That's literati.com/majority. You get 25% off your first 2 orders and receive 5 incredible kids' books. curated by experts, delivered to your door every month. That's literati.com/majority. Can make your little one's holiday season unforgettable this year. And also one of the things that we do on Hanukkah, which starts Thursday night, tomorrow night, is I tell the kids one night at least, you will not get presents. Instead, we're going to donate your money to a charity. And the way that I'm doing it this year, to give them like an opportunity to look. I mean, Mila has some ideas, but she said she wants to do like 3 or 4 nights. But I'm not bragging about my kids.
Yeah, well, she sounds like a good kid.
Well, she sells all her clothes and gets plenty of money, so she doesn't care. All the clothes I buy her. But the point is, this is a great. GiveWell has been is perfect for this because I plan to sit the kids down, and use GiveWell.org as the way that they can look for charities. And GiveWell.org has been helping donors find charities for over 10 years. And they focus on projects that save and improve lives the most per dollar. Here's how they do it. GiveWell dedicates over 20,000 hours to researching charitable organizations, handpicks a few of the highest impact charities that are evidence-based, their impact. All the research is publicly available. They give it away for free on their website. Since 2010, GiveWell has helped over 50,000 donors direct over $500 million to the most effective charities. GiveWell never takes any fees. All of your tax-deductible donations are given to the charity that you choose. For me, that's how I found Give Directly. And again, all of these charities on there, you go, you make your own assessment. But for me, I found Give Directly through GiveWell. I don't think they're related. I'm not sure about that, but I think it's a coincidence. But it's basically where they target where people who need direct cash assistance. There's a lot of data that shows the best way to help people who are hurting for cash is to give them cash. And they figure out how to distribute that. So extreme poverty, folks, are suffering from COVID-19 in this country. And then they have, you can target it to other places around the world where you just give the cash directly. But you can go there to givewell.org, find the charity that's right for you. You only have a few days left to make a tax-deductible donation for the new year. Go right now. And when you make your first donation to GiveWell, your gift will be matched up to $250. Go to givewell.org/majority. Pick podcast and majority report at checkout. This matching offer is good for as long as funds last. Get your first donation matched up to $250 at givewell.org/majority and select podcast and majority report at checkout. Also, just a reminder, you can check out the AM Quickie. We're doing that every morning. Basically get it out the door by 8 a.m. Top headlines, stories you may miss, stories that we don't get to even cover on this show, all within 7 minutes. If you have not tried out the AM Quickie, try it out. You can go to amquickie.com to sign up, or you can just find it on your podcast servers. Or I think we have it on YouTube at Majority Report Audio as well. But find it in your podcast feed. Okay, let's welcome to the program Lydia DePillis, reporter with ProPublica, who has written a piece on how dozens of Trump's political appointees will stay in government after Biden takes over. Lydia, are you there?
Hi, I'm
Hi.
here.
Well, welcome to the program, Lydia. I'm here with Emma Vigeland. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
So, Lydia, we should start off by saying that this practice of burrowing, as it's known, this happens at the end of every administration to some degree or another, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's sort of a natural thing, right? You get brought into an administration as a political appointee, which just means that you serve at the pleasure of the president. And then you maybe want to take a job that isn't one of those political appointments because you want to stick around. And it's not necessarily nefarious. And it does happen at the end of it, every administration. And the reason it has a sort of formal term is because over the years, the Office of Personnel Management has decided to apply various processes to make sure that these jobs are not being handed out with a lot of political preference at play, because these are folks who have demonstrated that they are friends with the administration. They are chosen for that reason. So there's certainly the potential for political influence, but plenty of them are benign.
Well, now, what do you mean by political? What do you mean by that? Political preference?
So there's like 4,000 people at the outset of an administration who are political appointees. Only about 1,000 of them are actually Senate confirmed. So many of these people are in important managerial positions, but they don't rise to any kind of public radar. And, historically, centuries ago, these jobs were handed out through the patronage system. And to some extent, that still happens, right? And it happened in the Obama administration. People who were field workers, like campaign staff, all of a sudden it's like, let's find you a place because reward for good service. And that's totally allowed. The thing that is more problematic is when those jobs, those people then are converted into jobs that are part of the career civil service, which come with a great deal of protections because these people are supposed to be non-political. They serve from administration to administration. And it's actually sort of difficult to fire them.
And do we know, I mean, can you tell us what the numbers are? Like, I know we have 2 million people who work in the federal government, more or less on some level, but that includes like postal workers and everybody. And I imagine this group of people that we're talking about, they come in as political appointees. There's 4,000 of them. Ostensibly, they're supposed to leave, but then some stay on because they want a career job, or at least for a period of time, they want that career job. And so, I mean, how many, like, is there a number in there of like that type of position where they would go into an agency, get the civil service job? Do we have a sense of like how many like possible positions there are like that?
Oh, I mean, it's potentially very large, right? Like the civil service is tens and thousands of people. And so the actual number of requests that OPM gets from the administration to put its political appointees into these jobs is pretty small. So they started requiring in 2010, like all of those positions had to be reviewed. So there is a list of people who are making these transitions, and it's submitted to Congress, and it's usually not made public. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, does take a look at these every term or so, or whenever a president leaves office. The last time they did this, which was in 2016, they found there was something like 99 requests to transition people over that entire period, 2015 or 2010 to 2016, to get people who were political appointees in the Obama administration into civil service jobs. And so there was like 100 of them, and they rejected a bunch of them. And some of them didn't end up taking the job. So the point is that it's actually a fairly small pool of people who try to make this transition. Right.
What is that figure relative to the Trump administration? You say there's 100 between those 6 years. Where are we now in the Trump administration? We still have another, 3 or 4 weeks. And so this could keep going on, but where are we at this point?
Truly. So, from what I've understood, I have the number for 2019. It's like about 33. I have the lists for the first 3 quarters of this year. That's another approximately 33, like with a few sort of on the edges of people who declined the positions or were denied the positions. And so, that adds up to like somewhere in the range of like 60, 70 for last year and this year. And that might be, it sounds like, oh, well, that's only 2 years compared to 6 years. So there's a gazillion more. That's probably not the case. I think probably more of them end up coming through later in the term. It does take a while for these people to be approved. So we won't know the total number probably until like early next year when the GAO reports. But anyway, the point is that it's not far out of line.
Okay. I mean, it's 6 years versus 4 years, but I guess, if we get up to about 100, it's going to be, I guess more or less in that respect. And of course, if you're not leaving the administration, there's less of an urgency, I guess, to get you in there. Right. I mean, so those first 2 years of that 6 years that are, well, all right. So let me ask you this. And here's, I guess, the thing that it becomes, sort of, you've mentioned there are 4,000 of these political appointments that the Biden administration has to fill. Mm-hmm. And then ostensibly there's work to be done. So the resources that can be dedicated to observing who these people are and making sure they're not they're not carrying out an agenda that is more aligned with Donald Trump and the Republicans than the Biden administration is a difficult task. I mean, it sounds like it wouldn't, but it's like we've got to dedicate resources to actually doing stuff rather than sort of this rear guard effort and making sure that these people aren't sort of destroying the furniture, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting because like this is a very small window into the sort of potential destroying the furniture that could happen in this lame duck period. And it happens to be that it is carefully tracked by OPM. Like, I'm actually not sure it's the biggest way or channel through which that will happen. I don't have evidence of any conscious plan that the Trump administration is trying to insert its operatives all over the government. I don't think that this is very directed, honestly. I think it's a lot of probably ideological folks with pretty partisan credentials who wish to continue their government service. And that will probably mean that wherever they are, they'll be able to like slow down regulations. If they're in the judicial branch, right? I don't want to say skew, but like push judges in the direction of more conservative rulings. And so that's certainly at play. I just think that there's at the same time a whole rulemaking process that is moving very quickly that will also be very difficult for the Biden folks to roll back or stop. So I don't want to leave folks with the impression that this is the only way in which Trump administration influence could remain to bedevil the Biden folks.
All right. Well, I want to talk about the other channels in the rulemaking in a second. We'll touch on that, but the big concern, and I have no doubt. Well, let me put it this way: it's not hard for me to imagine that this is not directed by some type of significant plan based upon just what we've observed of the Trump administration. Even when they're doing what I would consider horribly nefarious things, they very often botch it. How many Supreme Court cases have we had where the court has just been like, had you come to us and done actually handed in your homework in the proper way, we would have ruled in your favor, but we're not going to now. You can come back and provide us a better answer. But there has been a stated agenda by this administration. Steve Bannon announced it very early, the destruction of the administrative state. When Barack Obama has political appointees who go into these positions, presumably, although I would imagine there's some exceptions to this rule, they're doing it because they want to strengthen these agencies that they're getting placed in. They believe in the mission of these agencies. To what extent? I mean, and we can go over some of the individuals that you flagged in your piece that might sort of like bring some of this out. But it seems to me like these are people who are going in and building a bank of, maybe they're doing it for ideological reasons, maybe they're doing it for career reasons that are outside of the civil service even, but going in, building a bank of favors for the corporations that these agencies are established to regulate, right? I mean, like there is a there is a specific reason why these agencies exist, and it is to curb what the private individuals or players are doing.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I would say in response to that. One, an advocate mentioned this to me, and I didn't end up the piece, but there was actually quite a few more people who ended up burrowing after the Bush administration. And the theory for that, and I don't have any proof, but I think this makes sense, is that the Bush folks actually believed in the mission or the utility of government, even if they had different values for what exactly than like the Obama administration, from the approach that government agencies should take. But they believe in the power of government to like accomplish their goals. And the difference with the Trump folks is that there's a ton of turnover. So it's not like, and there's a lot of people who are like cycling in and out, and a lot of these positions that were just left empty, right? Of the 4,000, I'm not sure all of them were ever even filled. And it's because the reasons you usually heard from agency heads is, well, we don't really need to do that job. So like, why would we make those appointments? Why would we fill those positions? And so the hypothesis is there may be fewer Trump administration folks going into the civil service because there's just less belief in government as having the power to accomplish whatever agenda that they have. And the other point I would make is that, like, sure, Republican administrations, especially this one, tend to be pretty corporate friendly, although there's like caveats to that, right? Like the corporate lobby has been very mad at the Trump administration for any number of actions on like immigration and trade, et cetera. But that like the revolving door is just such a much bigger issue. Like right. That happens with Democrats and Republicans, and the incentives to go out into a lobbying shop or to do favors on behalf of your boss, like who in the Senate or the House. I mean, those are just really, really powerful. And like, this is a very small piece of that.
Right. So that's just quickly my question, right? So in your piece, you talk about how a lot of these boroughs appointments were lobbyists in the past. Mm-hmm. Is that different substantively than past appointments in the Obama and Bush administrations, like what you're talking about?
I mean, if your definition of lobbyists includes folks who advocate for labor unions, environmental groups, consumer groups, which I do, you're right. I don't think like all lobbyists are bad. I think they're just advocates for whatever interest that is paying them. So absolutely, Obama hired from the ranks of those folks and probably gave them civil service jobs later, right? I mean, it's not something I think it's sort of unreasonable to expect people who go into government to have a completely technocratic background. Like lots of people work for different interests. I think it's the really problematic thing is when people pull strings and engage in an uncompetitive process. So folks who don't have that kind of pedigree and those kinds of connections, but who are more qualified, can't get the job. And like one person I would highlight who I did lead the story with is a young man by the name of Christopher Prandoni, who's in his early 30s. And, you know, he worked for his first job out of college was working for Americans for Tax Reform, Grover Norquist's group, which is like quite ideological. He is head of their energy shop there. And their primary goal is preventing regulations, especially around, you know, early at that time, one of the big debates was around whether to do a carbon tax. And so, you know, he made his way through the Council on Environmental Quality and then to the Department of the Interior, where he was an advisor to the secretary, and now has a civil service appointment as an administrative law judge, deciding a lot of the land use disputes within the Bureau of Land Management. And that's a job that he could stay in forever, however long, like until the Biden administration gets around to relocating him or something. But that is a position, that one of thousands in the federal government that has real consequences for, you know, how public lands are used.
I want to get to I want to just go a little deeper into Prandoni and also how the Biden administration could, if they get around to it after dealing with the 4,000 that they've got to hire and you know, the pandemic, which is probably, you know, and the potential for the recession. It's funny though, the idea that they did not fill those 4,000. Do we have any sense of that the Trump administration of how many of those positions actually did get filled? Because I can't help but remember a story early on in the transition when the Trump administration came in, and Jared Kushner apparently walked into the White House, one part of the White House, and was looking around and going like, okay, so who stays and who goes? And whoever was giving him the tour said, everybody goes. These are all political appointees.
It's one of those wonderful anecdotes about how little this administration understood about government when they came in. And I don't have that number. The Partnership for Public Service may have tracked it. It's one of those things that is very irritatingly not tracked. Like there's no central repository of appointments made to those positions that I'm aware of. I think
that's sort of amazing, isn't it?
It is, right? Like
because we don't have a sense of like the competence, even never mind the actual impact of what they're doing. We don't have the competence to even know like how competent they are just from an administrative standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, so there's like something called the Plum Book, which is this like large government GPO publication that lists every appointment that's political. There is, and many of the departments have their own lists of politicals at certain points in time that have come out through Freedom of Information Act requests. But it's like the different pieces of the elephant that you're trying to like look at to get a sense of how many jobs were filled. Because all of the early trackers on this really only did the ones that are Senate confirmed. Right. And there's much, it just goes much deeper than that.
So this, okay, I'm sorry. So I wanted to jump to this Prandoni. He is now been appointed to be a judge from his experience. I guess he's 3 years out of law school. His experience was working in Grover Norquist's shop, as it were, which was all just about, here's your portfolio, and you want to just put out a couple of position papers on why we shouldn't have regulation, essentially. Stop me if I'm mischaracterizing it. He gets appointed to the Associate Director for Natural Resources on the Council on Environmental Quality. I'm just going to guess that he said the environment's quality is fine. In fact, we're overreaching. We're making it too good. In some respects, or we have more of a margin of error than one would imagine. That's just a guess, but I imagine that's what he was doing. And so now he is a judge. What does he do as a judge in that? Like, I mean, give us a sense of like what the implications are of this Grover Norquist acolyte, his sitting in that position. How big are the cases that he's hearing? What are the implications, the real world implications?
They're not, these are pretty day-to-day matters. I mean, I haven't, the appointment was only made over the summer, and, talking to environmental advocates on this, they couldn't point to like one big thing that is before the commission, which is also sort of slowed down because of the pandemic. Right. And so it's hard to say what exactly the impact has been so far or will be, but there are, the kinds of things like, who has rights under oil leases and coal leases. So, it's I think a lot of this is too soon to tell. There is a list that I'm hoping to get from last year which would illuminate people who've been in their jobs longer and may have more time to make an impact. I just think that at this point, it's not clear to me, which doesn't mean that there hasn't been an impact.
Let's tell us about some of the other people that you highlighted in the in your piece. You talk about Gregory Sheehan.
Greg Sheehan was deputy director of the Fish and Wildlife Service and functionally the head of it because there was no director, because Ryan Zinke at the time couldn't appoint Sheehan to be the director because he didn't have there's apparently you have to have a scientific degree to be the director of the Fish and Wildlife Service. So instead he just functionally ran the agency as the deputy and did a lot of things like opening public lands for access to hunting and fishing, which is like not the worst thing, but it's not necessarily protective. And then the thing that environmental groups have been most concerned about is significantly weakening some of the Environmental Species Act rules around critical habitat. So those are things that are going to require attention by the Biden administration if they wish to reverse them. And he left the agency somewhat early, spent a year hanging out in Utah, where he's from, and then popped up again when he was appointed to be head of the Utah State Bureau of Land Management chapter. And in that position, he's actually slowed down some of the leases that were in the works for some of those big public land tracts out there, including Bears Ears National Monument, which was really controversial when they shrank it early in the term. But environmental groups just really don't like this guy, really think that he's going to shepherd through a bunch of the leases that the Trump administration had put into motion earlier on.
Is there anyone else who really stood out for you as someone who was sort of a zealot getting in there and looking to, in many ways, undermine what, at least, I think these agencies philosophically should be there. If they're going to err, they should err on the side of protecting the commons that we have tasked them to protect. Are there any zealots that you, or any folks that you perceive who are particularly set on preventing the agency from doing that to the extent that they can?
Yeah. So I would hesitate to use the word zealot, but like at least folks who, have a different agenda from the ones the Biden folks will bring in when they take office. And the highest profile one of these that came to light was, and this had been reported before, but like not extensively, is a gentleman named Tracy Short, who had been the principal legal director at the Department of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and had spent his career in government basically prosecuting immigration fraud and defending the government, usually again in cases where they were trying to keep people from entering the country. And so he was appointed to be the chief immigration judge, which is a role that basically runs the courts of immigration judges. There's 30 something of them, and determines the rules that they have to play by and who gets what caseloads. And so obviously, there's been an enormous backlog of cases for years now. And the way that they're dealing with that now is just accelerating the review of those cases in ways that judges have told me, or former judges have told me, makes it really difficult for them to consider the facts of every case. And so, and that's a job, that's a career job. So like they can move him, but it is going to require individual specific attention. It doesn't happen automatically.
How will the Biden administration, how do you move someone in civil service? You just put them in a different job, essentially?
Yeah. I mean, the way that it's usually been explained to me is that you can't fire them because you don't like the job that they're doing, but you can say, we are transferring you to the FOIA office or to some place that is like very undesirable, or like, this is what they did with a whole office of the USDA that does economics research. They said, your jobs are in,
yes,
I think it was Wyoming or something.
Yes,
like
they moved everybody from Washington. They said, we're going to move the office there. And if you don't want to join us, then you don't have to.
Exactly. And that was widely perceived as a way of just thinning out the office because they didn't like economic analyses on because they were doing a lot of things about climate change and like food stamps. And so that's usually how it would have to be done. Now, the Trump administration has issued an executive order called the Schedule F thing.
Yes. That
allows them to, requires agencies to designate anyone with policy advocating roles to be put on this new schedule that kind of makes them this like liminal thing in between a political appointee and a civil service person, and makes it much easier to transfer them or fire them. And so, that could have been like very damaging if the Trump administration remained in place. They probably don't have enough time to really act on it, although it is happening. But if Biden wanted to keep it around, he could use it to make some initial changes much more quickly than he otherwise would have been able to, although he's under a lot of pressure from unions to just scrap it immediately.
I see what you're saying. So essentially, Schedule F places a significant portion of these otherwise protected employees under a sort of like a quasi status that Biden could fire them without the civil service protections.
Yeah.
Okay. But unions want to get rid of that because it's a dangerous thing to keep around. This is what I vote for. Keep it for a year, clean up, and then jettison Schedule F. But I know no one's asking my vote on that. All right. Well, thank you so much for this, Lydia. We will put a link to this piece on majority.fm, how dozens of Trump's political appointees will stay in government after Biden takes over. Thanks so much for your time today. Really interesting.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, folks, going to take a quick break. Emma and I will be back with just a little bit more to cover. We're back. Donald Trump was at the Operation Warp Speed press conference the other day. Now, it is becoming clear, Emma, that this is just it's stunning. I don't know really even how to express this. Apparently, what the Trump administration did in ordering vaccinations, and they seem to have really chosen a path and then ignored it despite what's happening. I mean, early on they had, I don't know, maybe there was a half a dozen, maybe a little more different companies working on vaccinations, right? And on the outset, you don't necessarily know who is going to have an inside track, who is going to be more successful. So they basically said, we're going to place one bet on each. And that bet's going to be 100 million doses. And then as it seemed to move forward, as it became clear that Pfizer and Moderna were sort of having more success in their testing or had developed quicker for whatever reason, they went to the Trump administration and said, look, at least Pfizer, you should buy more. And the Trump administration, no, we're not interested. Apparently they did. They only bought 100 million doses from Pfizer and Moderna. Apparently they purchased 300 million doses. This is from Politico, from AstraZeneca. For whatever reason, it's unclear. Now, AstraZeneca, we're unclear as to why they do, but the outlook for the AstraZeneca vaccine at this point is mixed. They are not using the mRNA technology. They're trying to address it in a different way, maybe a more traditional way, and they're not having as much success with it. There's another one out there, Johnson & Johnson, which supposedly would only take one shot and makes it easier to manufacture in some ways, but we still don't know. We don't have as much clarity on that.
But the Moderna and the Pfizer are the ones that seem to be the most successful being implemented in the UK right now, the Pfizer one. And to use your betting analogy, they were playing with house money. I mean, this is the time to spend government money, and yet they chose to only bet $20 on each of these vaccines, as opposed to no, you have about $100,000 in your pocket, and none of it's yours. So go for it.
It's completely bizarre. Roughly, according to Politico, roughly 650 million of the 1.3 billion doses Pfizer says it can make in 2021 are already spoken for. Now, I mean, look, it's pretty simple math. If they say they can do 1.3 billion doses over the course of a year, and the first 650 million are spoken for, that means that they're not going to be able to get to the 650 million and one dose until June, right? I mean,
right.
If it takes you 12 months to produce 1.3 billion doses, you're not going to get to the doses that they have available now until June. And so the U.S. government today could say, okay, we're in. And Pfizer apparently would be like, well, yeah, okay, we'll get it to you. We'll start shipping in June. We got 100 million doses before then in the first tranche, essentially.
Enough for 50 million people, which is likely, I mean, ostensibly going to higher risk people, frontline workers, etc. Although I'm sure the wealthy will wiggle their way into getting some of the earlier doses.
Moderna says it can make anywhere from 500 million to 1 billion doses next year, which is a pretty wide flex there. But it's already promised 380 million shots to various countries. And they said just delivering those doses to governments have already ordered could take 6 months or more. So again, for the Moderna shot, and again, the U.S. government ordered 100 million. That's 50 million people. We may not see another dose from them until June in this country.
Because the Trump administration decided to not, bet enough money on either of these frontrunners here for whatever reason. It's not like this was coming out of Trump's individual pockets where I can understand why that guy might be cheap because he's in a lot of debt. No, this was the number one function of government, is to invest in these vaccines. And they chose to be cheap here for no reason, seemingly, except to, favor AstraZeneca or adhere to conservative ideology and be a part of the cult of conservative economic policy. I don't understand.
Well, I mean, that's the point. We don't know what the answer is. And so an opposition party that was determined to highlight the mistakes that this Republican administration has made, regardless of the fact that they're not going to be here, would be calling for hearings right now to find out exactly why they chose AstraZeneca to bet on, why when the Pfizer people came and said, look, you should buy another 400 billion doses here. Because listen, we're looking at a situation right now in terms of what we know for proven vaccinations. We're looking at a situation now where we only can cover 100 million people in this country at best until June. And then in June, theoretically, we're still having to roll out both production and the shots. I mean, which
we don't have money for, which because Congress has been unable to act, there's no funding for vaccine distribution.
There is no support for municipal or state to actually distribute this vaccination in terms of money. I mean, this is a huge, huge mess up. And there is only so much that the Democrats can do to rectify this. But again, this is one of those perfect situations where it's like, make them pay a political price for their total incompetence. This is not an ideological thing here.
This is basically saying the airwaves. This is, your case.
And the only way you do that is you call hearings. It's not enough to go on, the 6 p.m. show on a cable news network and say, from the rotunda and say, I think this is a bad idea. You need to start to investigate why this is for the American public. Really just shocking. And,
there's a reason that Pelosi put the progressives like Ocasio-Cortez on the oversight committee and stuff like that instead of, more powerful ones. She wanted their progressive aggression on oversight with the Trump administration. So use that to your political advantage.
Yep.
Use their bully pulpit in the way that you tried to maneuver things.
In the second half of the program, we're going to highlight a tweet thread by Katie Porter. And, the other day we were talking about, we were displaying Katie Porter's messaging about needing stimulus versus Nancy Pelosi's message, which is like, well, we don't have to worry about it as much now because Joe Biden's here. Again, Katie Porter has this tweet thread where she is out there calling out Mitch McConnell and making it very, very clear who is inhibiting us going forward and bringing the desperate needed help that folks have in the wake of.
Well, she must be in a safe blue district, right, Sam? She must just be one of those socialists in the squad who are in these city safe districts. Oh, wait, she's actually in a district that tilts red and has won re-election.
Right. And the thing is, like, she is putting on a clinic as to how you message these things. But of course, she is a freshman House member, and it's not going to get necessarily the same play in mainstream media as it would if we had this from the Democratic leadership. I mean, this is, and before we get any pushback on this, before you send me any emails, the bottom line is I understand it is the Republicans who are standing in the way of this. But I understand that because I do this professionally and I read every day, and I read more than I would ever wish upon anybody about this stuff. The point is the opposition party needs to be out there and making it clear to as many people as possible. And the way that you do that is you hold hearings. The way that you do that is you force votes that they don't want to take in these instances. And the forcing votes opportunity that passed, since the election, but there is no reason why there can't be hearings today. No reasons whatsoever. And also in the next half of the program, we're going to talk about Richie Neal, the congressman from Western Massachusetts, who part of the leadership, chairing the Ways and Means Committee, I think it is. And he is standing in the way of a bipartisan legislation that is a fix for surprise medical billing. It is stunning, and this is part of the reason why we had
have anything to do with that, Sam.
It's yeah, exactly. This is part of the reason why we were pushing so hard in his primary election, because regardless of what you thought of the other candidate, although I thought he was actually quite good, Morse, Richie Neal is standing in the way of help for people and working, apparently, it only seems like, for insurance companies and big corporations. But we will talk more about that in the future. If you missed any part of this show, check it out on Peacock tonight. You can check it out on the Choice channel, 5 p.m., 10 p.m., and later through the night. We will see you tomorrow. And if you're sticking around, we will see you right this second.
Yeah.
Right this moment. You're seeing me.
You're seeing me too.
And you're seeing Emma as well.
Although there's a delay. They may be seeing us 10 seconds later.
Well, it doesn't matter because they're still seeing us, even if we're traveling through the time-space continuum. They're still seeing us.
Which we are. See Jamie.
Always. And in a moment, you'll see Jamie. Just a reminder, this program relies on your support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. Jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show and you get extra content every day. Check it out, jointhemajorityreport.com. Don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Try the Majority Report blend. What else? amquickie.com. Check that out. And we have merch. shop.majorityreportradio.com. Now back from her hopefully temporary illness. Jamie, what happened to you on Monday?
It's not a very funny story. I was just up late with anxiety and I took a tiny bit of Xanax and then I woke up and I was like, I should not be on TV right now.
Stay away from those benzos. that stuff not good, not healthy.
No, I mean it might have given me a little window into what it's like to be near a tandem, though. I feel like I understand her better now.
Funny story.
Well, I've never heard of being up all night with anxiety. That's completely foreign concept to me. In the meantime, what's happening on the Antifada?
Well, this week on the Antifada, Sean and we did a vibes ep because we read a whole book last week. Can't do that every week. Talked about some news. I'm not selling this very well. We talked about the COVID vaccine and the politics around that. Uber got owned. They basically gave up on their bet on self-driving cars becoming a reality anytime soon. Real estate tycoons have recorded record profits during the pandemic. Amazon workers are organizing in Alabama, and much, much more. Also, later today, we are in soft launch mode for our Twitch channel right now, but I trust you guys. I trust everyone watching this to watch it and be nice. So at 7 p.m., Sean and I are going to be doing a Twitch stream from the Antifada's Twitch channel with Tony Boswell from Minion Death Cult, a very funny podcast.
Oh,
Twitch is where it's at.
Yeah, twitch.tv/the Antifada.
Folks, don't forget today on 3 p.m. the Nomaki Show. You can find the Nomaki Show at youtube.com/the Nomaki Show. On today, I think Representative Chris Robb, but I know for a fact Shahid Buttar will be on. I imagine he has some criticism of the way the Democratic leadership has been handling this as well. So frustrating, but check it out. And tomorrow on the Nomaki Show, Marianne Williamson is on. So Shahid, did I say Shahid? Shahid Buttar. I've got to mispronounce his name. Otherwise, people... It's
Shahid, I think. It's Shahid.
Yeah, Shahid. People, if I don't mispronounce their name now they get offended if I don't mispronounce their name.
It's suspicious.
Sam calls me Ema all the time.
People
just can't get it right.
People feel like I'm dissing them if I pronounce their name correctly, which is not true. It's just but I understand the sensitivity that people have to that.
Like your party trick.
Exactly.
Or it's like, now do me.
Mott.
Yeah, a couple things to plug. Last night on TMBS, there was a panel with the economists Mark Blythe and Richard Wolff, and joined by David Griscom and Ben Burgess. So pretty heavy hitter panel last night. Check that out. Also on Thursday, David and I will be streaming from the Left Reckoning YouTube channel. And on Friday, right after this show, I'm going to steal the raid. I will be listening to Marx's Critique of the Gotha program for a patron-only episode that will be recorded over the weekend. So a lot of stuff coming up for Left Reckoning as well. So check that stuff out.
Matt Lech, very, very busy.
I do get that a lot, actually.
I bet. All right, folks.
I bet you do.
Quick break. 646-257-3920 is the number. We will take your IMs and see you in the fun half.
In for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back, boys back, and the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back, boys back, and the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt. Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them. Almost says what?
What?
Almost says what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy! I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Let's get right into the IMs. Hi, Sam. I used to work for Turning Point USA, and in the span of 6 months have pivoted to being essentially a communist. Trump and the way they handled the stimulus was a huge part of what shifted my thinking. Love the show, and also your role in home movies was awesome. Boy, I don't hear that too often these days. You should call in sometime. 78-ass. I don't know what.
Hell yeah.
Hi, Sam. Says Hawaiian shirt guy. I love hearing stories of the war, like my grandfather used to share. Can you share anything from your time in the European theater? Okay. I know that's a joke, but I will tell you this. Back in the mid-90s, I was rolling in sitcom money. And so I took like 2 or 3 weeks to go to Italy and visit my sister who was living there at the time. And I hooked up with my buddy, David Waterman, who, if you've seen any of like Who's the Caboose or Pilot Season or any of that stuff, he was in all that. He was a guy I knew from Cross Comedy and good friend of mine. And his grandfather had stormed the beach in Anzio and hit a landmine and basically woke up to see a German shepherd dragging his leg away.
Oh my God.
Yes. And so I think his grandfather had died, even before in the 90s. And so we met in Anzio with a bunch of army men, little tiny plastic army men. And we both had video cameras. And at that time, it was like a mini DV was like the newest technology. And there was like, I had a Sony mini DV camera that was like this big. And I thought, oh my God, this thing is so small. And now it's probably has like 1/8 the quality of an iPhone. But we recreated the storming of the beach on Anzio with these little army men. We never did anything with it, but I have a photo of. I just ran into that photo. That's why it's sort of fresh in my memory. But that is my only story from the European theater regarding World War II. So I know that's not what you were looking for, but sorry.
Sounds like you boys had a real good time.
I came into this conversation from break a little late and started with someone's leg being dragged
Yeah, my
away by
buddy-
a German Shepherd.
Yeah, my buddy. Somebody had asked if they could hear any stories that they hear from their grandfather and his time in World War II in the European theater, and I was doing my best to.
Well,
play
I
along.
mean, you succeeded. You made
Yeah.
yourself, sound like a grandpa.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, you've got PTSD from the Iraq War, so you basically fought in that.
I did not know that. I did not. But I didn't even go over there to videotape anything. Let's go to 614 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Marcus, and I'm a part of Left Flank Bets, and I've been calling for a while, and I can't believe I'm actually on right now.
Well, Marcus, welcome to the program. Thanks for calling.
And actually, I will give you all the stolen value that you want. So the group is actually like Leftist Bets. But I did want to talk a little bit about, or ask you what you think about like the Lloyd Austin pick, because I think more so than Neera Tanden, he will be the one that gets the axe, because they got a black person to basically chop. So now Neera might have a better shot.
In the Senate, do you think ostensibly that the Republicans are going to do it because of the lack of a waiver? I mean, I know that we have already. Was it Murphy that came out yesterday and said he will not support
Blumenthal and
Blumenthal.
Blumenthal and Elizabeth Warren have come out and said that they won't support the waiver for Lloyd Austin, former Army general, to serve as the head of the Pentagon, which I think is, pretty commendable, and at the same time frustrating that like there are a lot of Democrats who are eager to do so anyway, and there are Republicans who, I forget, it was Inhofe who said he would absolutely support the waiver, so that kind of says a lot about Biden's appointment.
Senator Duckworth is doing the biggest Susan Collins impression by saying she won't support the waiver, but she would support him with her vote.
Right. Tell me what's your perspective on this as a vet?
Well, I think that if you're looking at his military career, he did a lot of just the normal ways that you make up that you get to that position. The officer ranks for Black people are a lot more, it's basically more segregated than enlisted. But a lot of that's kind of a barrier to education is kind of why that's a starting point. But the thing that worries me more is what he's done in the few years past or after his service, which was somehow making it on the board of Raytheon,
right,
a large steel manufacturer, and then also a huge healthcare healthcare company as well. So,
wow. Well, let me ask you, Abby. It's obviously like the corporate relationships are problematic. I think he was on a subsidiary. He was on the board of a company that got acquired by Raytheon. But in terms of that question of the waiver, how comfortable are you with I guess for me, one of the biggest problems with it is that it's two in a row. Like you're starting to you're starting to normalize the idea of a military person being the Secretary of Defense. And I just think that I don't know when that will be problematic, but someday it'll be problematic, I would imagine. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess I agree with you 100% with that. Obviously, the people who are appointing the positions are much more important. But at the end of the day, if someone, if Trump 2.0 or just Trump 2024 is able to get in, this president is absolutely concerning, because by that time, maybe there is someone in the military, just getting out of the military, that would be more helpful to, I guess, a more authoritarian.
Right.
And if they have support from the military, then that's when the law is there for a reason, and that's where you can see the issue arising.
Appreciate the call.
Thanks. Love you guys.
Thanks.
Left Flank Vets sounds like a super interesting organization.
Yeah.
I want to learn more about that, because anytime we have anti-capitalists and the military together, seems like a really good opening to radicalize people who are maybe in a important position in society.
All the parts of the military that a lot of people like are the most socialistic of those parts, right? I mean,
the free college, the healthcare, the housing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If only people could have that without having to fight our wars of empire.
Or wear uniforms. Or have direct bosses that you can have no you have no
you can't
say.
Contradict. That would be the worst part of it.
You
for
can't
me.
go.
I'm like,
you can't contradict without going to jail.
Yeah, you're kind of acting like a dick, and I'd like to tell you off, but then I'd go to prison. So,
here is Kayleigh McEnany, and I presume she is on now in her role as campaign spokesperson as opposed to White House spokesperson. Can we get clarification on this, guys?
Yeah, she definitely, because there's the Trump-Pence
logo in the background. That's the way you know it. That's the
Right.
way you know it. That's the way
and
you
if
know
the
it.
White House is in the background, then you know that she's in her other capacity.
Right. I see.
She should
That
just
that makes it
wear
completely
different
clear.
clothing.
Yes.
Speaking of uniforms, she should wear a white hat when she's her White House role and a red MAGA hat when she's in her Trump campaign.
That would be too clarifying, though, and actually the
Obviously,
vagueness
then
is.
that would the obfuscation is the whole point of this charade.
I think it's like you should have to read like where the sun is in the shot behind her, and if it's
right. If Mercury's in retrograde, then Kayleigh McEnany is the White House spokesperson.
Now, right now, the state of Texas is suing Georgia and one or two other states, I guess, for counting their votes properly. This is a suit brought by Ken Paxton, who's the attorney general there, who, as far as I know, is still under investigation for regarding maybe taking money for favors. But here she is, and we know that the latest lawsuit that made it to the Supreme Court was thrown out rather unceremoniously by the Supreme Court that was dealing with Pennsylvania. Here is, and I think Sidney Powell, who is not even apparently working with the Trump campaign whatsoever. They've never even heard of her. In fact, she's so out of this, she may not have COVID. That's how far removed she is. But here is Kayleigh McEnany saying that there's a lawsuit. There's some mental gymnastics going on here. Listen to this.
Tried type of election with the mail-in voting. And what this lawsuit does, it looks at those anomalies, and here's what it finds. It finds that the chances of Biden coming from as far behind as he was at 3 a.m. on election night, the chances of that are 1 in 1 quadrillion. The chances of him, that's prevailing in one state, prevailing in all 4 of the states where he was so far behind, the chances of that are 1 in a quadrillion to the 4th power. This is all outlined right here in this lawsuit, everything we've discussed in a source document by attorneys before the United States Supreme Court.
Well, then I'm sure the Supreme Court, I'm sure if there's a 1 in quadrillion chance of Joe Biden, the way that they talk about this is like he's coming back. No, they just hadn't counted the ballots yet.
Yeah, I know. And they know that, and they're relying on people not necessarily understanding that in order. Like, that's what bothers me so much about so much of the Trump administration's discourse, is that it's built on a bedrock of ignorance about issues. They are reliant on people not understanding things to make their own case.
I am willing to wager anything that I own that we will see footage of Trump voters saying there was a 1 in 1 quadrillion chance of Joe Biden coming back from the ballots at 3 a.m. in 4 different states. I don't even, and I'm going to, this is a quote. This is a quote.
You
This is a quote.
can't dispute it.
I don't even know how to, what 4 times 1 quadrillion is. And I personally don't, but that's going to be the quote. And so there's the competition, folks. When you find that on video stated by a Trump supporter, you send it to me on Twitter. I send you a sweatshirt. Boom. There it is. Keep your eyes out for it. It's going to exist without a doubt. Every one of these lines that they put out there ends up getting repeated over and over again in these these sort of like conspiracy circles.
Right. And when you repeat something over and over again, it becomes fact. That's how it works.
It got a good messaging shop. Got to hand it to them.
Yeah.
Well, you got to,
and it helps that their followers literally believe everything they say. I mean,
exactly.
But as you were saying, I mean, the Supreme Court laughed this out of the room, even with Amy Coney Barrett, their supposed plan. Like, if this election had been closer on the state level, say it came down to Pennsylvania, say it came down to Ohio or Florida or Wisconsin, whatever, yeah, we would have had a really, really severe situation on our hands. And I think the Supreme Court would have acted politically and gone in the direction of Donald Trump. But that's not the case right now. And they just keep embarrassing themselves further.
Yeah, well, it's kind of encouraging, actually, that the legitimacy of these institutions is something that they have to be concerned about still. You know, otherwise, like, I really thought they were just going to do whatever the heck they wanted to, but it turned out they needed a little more to work with than they had.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, it appears, I think somebody tweeted out that no Republican official with official powers actually used them. Michigan, they flirted with overturning it, but like the actual people that had power, like Raffensperger, for instance, right? Like they actually didn't go for Trump. But I mean, everybody who didn't, like, universally is on board with the Stop the Steal stuff. So
I think if it had been a little bit closer, and frankly, like a guy like Raffensperger going up and doing that, there is a sort of, particularly with these folks in this ilk, I think there is a real sort of sense of like looking around and, which way am I supposed to go here? And I think that influenced things. It could have gone the other way, I think, super, super easily. And one thing that's interesting, just as a side note, it appears that, was it OWN? Who is it? Which network was it that, or was
Newsmax.
it Newsmax? Newsmax, for the first time ever, beat Fox in an hour in the ratings.
Nice.
And so, I mean, I think it was, they're way down on the thing, but
is this the Nielsen ratings, or is that just for radio? Because aren't the Nielsen ratings largely manufactured and made up?
No, they're radio is Arbitron, I think, and they may have been bought by Nielsen. The Nielsen ratings, I mean, I don't think that they're necessarily made up. I don't know how statistically valid they are, but they do get data directly from your cable box, I think, now. So
do they now? Because my family did it when I was a kid. We
yes,
were like a Nielsen
you had to write it in
for
at that time.
Yeah. Oh my God, I have not thought about that in literally like a million years.
Yeah, we did that too, and you got like $20 or something, right?
Yeah.
I just remember people saying it was very unreliable, but I guess now that you have cable boxes, they can electronically track.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of it is in fiction anyways, to be honest with you, but supposedly now it's more electronically verified. The Arbitron, at one point they had a people listener. I haven't followed this stuff in a while because I haven't cared about ratings that much in a long time, but
then you're not Donald Trump.
But Arbitron would actually have like a people listener where they would actually pick up what your exposure to radio was if you got into a cab or if you got into somebody's and which is also sort of creepy when you think about it as well. But
I think they've been expanding into phone apps for that sort of stuff too. So if like you're at a bar and there's like a TV on, they want to catch you getting those ads too.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. I think they probably pick up trends more than like the actual specifics to the extent that they do. But I also am a firm believer that every aspect of television in particular, there's a fiction at every step of the process, or at least back in the day. I don't know what it's like today in TV, but there's the executives are pretending that they know what is going to be watched, and the producers pretending that they know what they're going to be able to do, and the advertisers are pretending to their clients that they can reach the people they want to reach, and the media brokers are pretending. I mean, it's all just this fiction that everybody's just sort of going like, let's just shake our heads yes, and we'll all make some cash. That was always my impression of it. Meanwhile, here is Donald Trump. And did we do this clip? Did we do clip number one? We didn't. No, I thought we had, but we have in fact not. Here's Donald Trump at the Warp Speed conference bragging about how he underbought the vaccines and we're going to end up being delayed in getting all vaccinated. Oh, that's not what it is. He's talking about how he won the election and how Republicans need to stand up for that.
I received almost 75 million votes, the highest number of votes in the history of our country for a sitting president, 12 million more than the 63 million we received 4 years ago. President Obama received 3 million less in his second term, and he won easily. I received 12 million more, which, by the way, is a record, 12 million more. And they say that when the numbers came out, and the numbers came through machines, and all of those ballots were taken away and added. All you have to do is turn on your local television set, and you'll see what happened with thousands of ballots coming out from under tables, with all of the terrible things you saw. All you have to do is take a look, and if somebody has the courage, I know who the next administration will be. And I'll tell you what, life will be much easier for this country because of what we've done right now. And because of a lot of the people in this room, the job you've done on the vaccine, together with a lot of others, has been a modern-day miracle. And it's really been acknowledged as such. And I want to thank you. I want to give you my love. And I want to give you my thanks because you're very special people. And now, good luck. You distribute that, General, and really set records, okay? Set records just like we've been doing for 4 years. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Just want to say I should still be president. It's a mystery that there could be more votes for the other guy than me.
I know. Well, all you have to do is turn on your television set and then that explains. Like, they keep using these circumstantial things and they're so weak, even to Trump supporters, right? Like, Biden just sat in his basement the whole time.
Yes,
how could he have won millions more votes than me, right? Okay. He still could have done that. That's just how much people hate you. And he can't comprehend that. Like, that's part of his pathology. He doesn't understand that there are millions of people who voted for the guy that sat in his basement and didn't do anything because they hate you that much.
I think he gets that. He's just in angry denial about it because it doesn't compute for a narcissist when they get that kind of information.
But like, then does he actually grasp it? Like, I don't know where the line is. So with the Bob Woodward stuff, where he was clearly knowingly lying about coronavirus and how deadly it was, he was saying behind the scenes that, you know, it was more deadly than the flu, but then going on the podium and saying it's not more deadly than the flu. Is that how he is for everything? Is he behind the scenes recognizing reality? Or is it when things involve him and his own ego and his, say, winning and electoral chances that are quantifiable? Is it like a pathology where he cannot grasp or understand reality, or his mind doesn't allow him to?
I don't think it's mutually exclusive. I think it's a combination of like, look, I may have lost, but it seems really weird. And all I know is I have to fight. And that's it. And I don't think he has, I get the sense that the introspection sort of ends there.
Well, I mean, there's a lot you can do when you don't have shame. I mean, there's no limit to.
Hi, this is Jack Smith. What was that guy's name? What was his thing?
John
Miller.
Real last name.
This is John Miller. The hot girls really like Donald Trump. I wouldn't want you to write that, but if you want to write that, that's fine. I mean, yes, he could do anything.
He's holding multiple truths in his head at once. All right. He's basically a Zan Cohen. He's doing dialectics.
There you go. Actually, we just got an IM run PMC. Jamie, could you give a basic explanation of dialectics? I can't seem to understand the concept for some reason.
Well, I'm not going to try to do it right now, right here on Majority Report, but the first ever episode of History is a Weapon that we put out with the Antifada is all about historical materialism, and it goes over the role of dialectics in that. But basically, it's when you study history and you're Marxist, you look at the material base which creates all culture and all human consciousness. And that's what drives history, not the ideas in people's heads. And where dialectics come in, it's a little confusing. Basically, you got you got a tendency, you got a counter tendency, and sometimes they synthesize into a synthesis, and that's dialectics. I don't know if that was clear or not, but we got a whole episode on it that you can listen to.
Yeah, just keep plugging. You can see the Antifada, and then you'll know the full answer.
Like it is legitimately. There's a bit to it, I would say.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, it's kind of like a philosophy course. It's not immediately explainable concept.
I mean, isn't it in its most generic form? It is really just sort of like determining something through maybe opposing or maybe somewhat nuanced opposing perspectives or realities.
Not quite, I would say, because the perspective is like the human consciousness element, and the dialectic, the tendencies that we look at tend to be like currents, things that occur in the world. But again, it's the Hegel part of Marx. I haven't read Hegel, but I've read a bit of Marx, and all I know is that it is complicated and annoying and weird, but Marx without Hegelian dialectics is very bad and not useful. So we got to deal with it, unfortunately.
So meanwhile, we are hoping that our government is fighting the COVID pandemic. We have the numbers look really bad. They're going to get worse. On December 8th, we had 2,600 people. About 2,600 people die. This is from the New York Times. We had 104,000 hospitalized. That is data from the COVID Tracking Project. And we had, on December 8th, 220,000 new infections. This is how you calculate back of envelope as to where we're going to be in terms of deaths. You take that figure, 220,000, you multiply it by 1.4 to about 1.6 or 1.8. Those are sort of like, the ABC scenarios that you could possibly have. You look out 16 to 21 days, and that's how you will predict how many people will die 16 to 21 days from now. On that day, we will be above, and that is just about Christmas, we will be above 3,000 people dying a day in this country. That number at one point could pop higher because hospitals may not have capacity. Remember, we were all talking about flattening the curve back in New York, back in April? I guess that wasn't necessarily a national thing, but it was, the idea was you cannot have a spike of hospitalizations because the capacity for our medical system is limited, and it has very little room to address something like this. So we could very well see those breaches in different places around the country. And there's no reason to believe that number, 220,000, is going to be less on today. Maybe the number's already come out, or tomorrow, or going forward. We're just now seeing the wave of people who contracted it during Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, like I say, you would expect the government to be fighting the coronavirus pandemic, but instead, Donald Trump is fighting the nascent war on Christmas. This is clip number 4.
Some of these scientific officials here in this room have encouraged Americans not to travel this holiday season, not to go to large gatherings. Across the street, you've been holding holiday parties with hundreds of people, many not wearing masks. Why are you modeling a different behavior to the American people than what your scientists tell?
Well, they're Christmas parties, and frankly, we've reduced the number very substantially, as you know. And I see a lot of people at the parties wearing masks. I mean, I would say that I look out at the audience at those parties, and we have a lot of people wearing masks, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Really important. I just want to make it clear. Christmas party, not a holiday party.
Rudy Giuliani just tested positive for COVID. Sorry,
Jenna
James.
Ellis just tested positive
Yes.
for COVID. I
If
think
Trump
you should know
wants,
that.
Trump should go make this his thing. Like, if you get together at holidays, wear masks.
I believe him. Don't you believe him, though? I'm sure. Throw up a picture. Throw up picture number 5. Here it is. Look at all those people wearing masks at the.
I don't understand feeling comfortable. Like the kind of cognitive dissonance, the kind of arrogance that you have to internalize. Jesus. Like, how do
Look
you
at all the
feel?
masks.
Look at none of those
Go back.
guys.
Go back one.
Saw
Go back
one.
one.
Oh my God, it's Kid Rock.
Kid Rock's famous. You don't want to have him wear a mask.
There is one guy in that picture with a mask
Famous face.
out of.
And everyone called him a cuck.
Yeah, but Sam, look at all. They're just taking it off for the
12,
picture. Can't you see all the
14.
masks in their hands?
14 people, one person taking the photo. I mean, wearing the mask. Yeah, keep going. This is like watching a game of like Russian roulette. That's what it is.
Well, they know that they're going to be fine because they're a bunch of rich people if they get the virus.
I know,
Yeah,
but
Rudy's leaving the hospital today.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
They have access to experimental treatments that normal people don't.
That's true. But also, there are completely, and I know I'm speaking rationally and they are not, connecting these dots, but there's potential for infertility in men that they're seeing now with COVID if you get a bad case of it. Issues with obviously heart scarring, all these things that should be terrifying because this is a disease that we do not know enough about. They are completely oblivious to it. I mean, I like nothing has made me feel more disconnected from my acquaintances and people I see in my life. If I see on Instagram stories, like going to parties or hanging out in large gatherings, the idea, like, I don't even want to go out to dinner. I would have never done indoor dining. I think I did outdoor dining twice or 3 times or something like that in the summer. But don't people feel anxiety about getting COVID? Don't they care?
No matter how many they've got the ultimate cure for everything, which is money.
I get it, but even with money, you could still become infertile if you have a bad case of it. If you're a man, apparently,
They're not thinking about that.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I think like for someone like Giuliani, that experimental drugs is available, but I don't think there's a lot of those people there that all have access to it. I mean, there's only so much of it. And there's no doubt in my mind that like a guy like Giuliani gets that treatment or Chris Christie does, but I don't know how, I don't know. I'm skeptical. Here is
I feel like if you're friends with Trump, you got a connection. He's got a guy.
It's possible.
I just hope Rudy's not
they're
infertile
just-
now.
They're just
Here's,
Trump.
yeah. Here's Rudy Giuliani. We got a clip of Rudy Giuliani talking apparently about his treatment. Here it is.
The most important question of all, Rudy Giuliani. How do you feel, buddy?
I feel just about 100%
Pause it for 1
right
second.
now.
We should say this is on the former Imus show. What do they call it now? The Bernard McGurk show or something?
Bernie and Sid in the
Bernie
morning.
and Sid on WABC. Yeah, here we go.
The most important question of all, Rudy Giuliani. How do you feel, buddy?
I feel just about 100% right now. I'm gonna be discharged this afternoon. I'm pretty much 100%. I've got to quarantine for a few more days because the way they calculate it, I probably got it about 7-8 days ago. So I got about 3 or 4 more days to make sure it's out of my system. But right now, I'm functionally fine. I have no pains, no fever. I walk around fine. My breath is good. I have a teeny cough that's going away. I feel better than when I came in, actually.
Wow. That's what President Trump was saying. You feel like he said he felt like
Well,
Superman.
I took some of the same medicines, and I have to say they are miracles. I mean, there's one that I took. By the next morning, I felt like I was 10 years younger.
Wow. I mean, it's almost like they contain steroids and make you feel entirely powerful and strong, and no one else has access to it because you are president adjacent and you are a horrific human being who blows holes in the idea of meritocracy because you now have access. Rudy Giuliani. Then, by the way, they used like the most flattering picture they could find of him from like 20 years ago. Rudy Giuliani has the best access to healthcare in this country. And that goes to show that the good people don't always get rewarded. I'm glad he's okay, despite what Jenna Ellis said about my remarks on the situation. I am glad he's okay. But like the idea that they are talking about how good they feel, it's quite dangerous because they know that most people aren't able to get these experimental treatments that they inject into him. He's aware of that, but it doesn't matter. It's all about upholding the myth that makes Trump look better, that makes the virus go away, that makes the economy ostensibly get back to normal. It's grotesque.
Do you think he realizes
I was just going to say, just from a public health standpoint, one of these guys getting it bad would be a useful message to people, actually. Because Trump getting it and coming back and saying, I'm better than ever, I think is partially responsible for the massive influx we have now.
No. But that's never going to happen because they're rich and they can, like Jamie said, they can get access to all of these experimental treatments. And so it creates this false perception that getting COVID is not that big of a deal.
I mean, Donald Trump, he went on onto the White House lawn and said, I'm going to get this for everybody. Everybody's going to get this treatment. We now have nearly 3,000 people a day dying from this. And so I wouldn't waste the energy on hoping that Rudy Giuliani passes away from COVID. But I think as a technical matter, it is absolutely undeniable that his death would probably save lives. And I mean,
that's just math.
Now, I'm not Thanos, and so I would never wish that on anybody.
You're not a utilitarian.
I'm not Thanos from the Avengers. But I think that like as simply as an obvious matter as a question of physics, his dying would at least, I think, send a message to these COVID deniers who I don't know that it's a 1-to-1 proportion or ratio between a COVID denier and an election denier, but I would imagine it's pretty close, would send the message that, hey, like this thing is dangerous. Now, of course, they would say Rudy Giuliani is very, 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 very old and clearly unhealthy and probably had some pre-existing conditions or something like that. I don't know.
They'd find a way to rationalize it.
They would
well, I mean, they did it with Herman Cain.
Would throw him under the bus immediately. Does anyone think he wouldn't blame him for dying of COVID?
They did it with Herman Cain, and then Herman Cain's social media account is still tweeting out, pro-Trump propaganda. Like, I guess, and I know Herman Cain wasn't in the immediate Trump orbit. It's not like Rudy Giuliani, who's his little henchman, but I don't know. I don't know how far that would go because the desire for COVID to be over is outweighing the rational reaction to COVID killing people.
I like people who didn't get COVID.
So who wants to watch Ken Paxton? Can we put up a tear sheet and show that Ken Paxton is under investigation? Just Google Ken Paxton investigation. This is the Attorney General from the state of New York. A lot of people have been like, why?
State of Texas.
Yes, Attorney General, state of Texas. Well, a lot of people have been, why would Ken Paxton, as the Attorney General of Texas, remember, this is also, why would he be suing the states of Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada, particularly when you're like a states' rights guy, right? Why would you be suing these other states? I don't even know what standing another state would have in this instance. Like, why would you be doing that? Well, it couldn't possibly be to get a pardon. Here's Ken Paxton interviewing for a pardon from Donald Trump on Fox and Friends this morning.
So, Mr. Attorney General, the question is, even if you're right and there are going to be problems with this type of volume, especially when you have unsolicited mail-in ballots, is the horse out of the barn? Is the election over? It's been 5 weeks, and a lot of these judges, there's been 50 cases and without a victory, a lot of the judges, a lot of these courts are saying, I don't want to hear it.
So even though the genie's out of the bottle, our argument isn't necessarily directly about the fraud. Our argument is that because these states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin did not follow their own state law, and that these orders were by other elected officials to change the law or by other judges, that is unconstitutional. Therefore, that election, we can't go back and fix it, but we can say, okay, let's transfer this to the legislature, which used to do this in other states, and let them to decide the outcome of the election. That would be a valid constitutional situation.
First off, this is, this is a twofer for the Republicans, right? One is we're going to delegitimize the Biden presidency, right? That's a big part of this. The other is this is my audition tape. This is my sizzle reel for a pardon from the president.
Yeah.
I
think the latter.
I think this is going to get so unceremoniously bounced from whatever court it goes to. Just even the idea that like another state has a standing to say that another state is not following the Constitution is just bizarre. It's just a bizarre legal concept. I mean, it's really just, honestly, it is like, hey, everybody in the office, let's think of a way I can get a pardon. Come up. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's the wackiest damn ass thing in the world. Just, I want it. I want a pardon. We're going to spend Texas tax dollars in supporting my project for a pardon for me, period. Let's get on it. And then somebody's like, hey, I got you booked on Fox and Friends for this lawsuit. You're going to sue other states.
There's this recognition. I mean, I remember it might have been Lindsey Graham who went directly on Fox and Friends and said, Mr. President. There is this mass recognition with Republicans that the way to get to Donald Trump is to go on his favorite morning show and talk basically directly to him, which is just a fascinating dynamic.
Yes. All right, let's do this Matt Walsh one. He's a funny person to talk about. This is
a truly normal guy.
We got another Matt Walsh today.
Yeah, he's got
to get it in before the end of the quarter. Is the thing.
Remember what we said yesterday on the program? I think it was yesterday, where you were saying, Emma, that it's like everything is about the culture now because they have really like, if you're going to pretend you're one of these sort of like rational, logical, right-wing talkers, what you have to do is engage in the greatest amount of denial that you could possibly summon up to not see what's going on around you with your Republican Party, with your conservative movement as to how completely deluded they are. At the same time, not only is their delusion just immense and they're all participating in it, they are also witnessing an abject failure of even the most basic rudimentary functions of a government in terms of protecting their people to some degree, to the extent that you could, from a pandemic, which now also dovetails with their complete ineffectiveness and their just total incompetence. And that's the best thing I can say for it. I have a feeling there may be other things that come out in terms of them arranging for the American people to get vaccinations, which apparently just about every other Western country in the world has been able to figure out how to do. So what do? You talk about a woke Santa.
As for the mall Santa, he sadly is not alone in apparently thinking that there's something wrong or troubling about boys playing with toy guns. This is a common hang-up that people have, and increasingly so in our confused and anti-male society. It goes along with the general hang-up about boys being aggressive, rough, violent. Everywhere a boy turns, he's met by forces wishing to domesticate and feminize him. Now, on the list of those threats,
pause it for 1 second. Hold on. This is just unbelievable. First off, it's a story of a mall Santa who discouraged a kid from getting a Nerf gun. Now,
the pressing issue in America today.
Now, what's amazing though about this is that instead of him seeing this as an anti-gun thing, he makes it about the feminization of men. Like,
I follow it.
Just a recognition that guns are essentially extensions of men, insecure men's
right. It's not like
genitalia.
this Santa's going like, well, Timmy, if your name was, Betty, well, you'd be getting a gun, but you're not. It's the idea that this is about feminization. And I love the idea, like, go back. Like, people should listen to these words that he's using. Domesticate males? What the F does that mean?
No, it doesn't mean anything. And again, I just want to remind people that this isn't even the culture war stuff that's connected to politics. Like, you could still talk about culture in the way that Fox News does about, immigrants and caravans and Black people being dangerous, whatever. This is just vague,
but I
insecure
disagree.
white male stuff. That's not even, it's not politics. This isn't politics.
Well, it's political in that it distracts from the stuff that's going on that's actually really important.
Right. I get that. But the point is that they're not even good at the political culture stuff, and they know they can't win there. So they go to vague
I
things
disagree.
Like
I mean, I think it is a distraction, but it is fundamentally, I mean, I think, like, from our perspective, it's not politics, but this is first principles for so much of their politics. When you talk about a woman's right to choose, when you
Buck
talk
Sexton
about
on the same story, by the way.
Well, yeah, because they don't have material things to offer people, so this is what they have to fall back on.
But this translates ultimately into material. It is what reinforces their worldview that there should be a patriarchy, which means that it is men who should control the money. That there are traditional values, Western values, which means that white men should be controlling the money. I mean, these are just like, these are the, not even Ionian, it's like, these are the roots for their entire political project of a social oppression that also coincidentally puts them in a position to control the money and the power.
Right. They're victims until they are seizing the power. That's the whole point of it.
But yeah, exactly. Or they're victims if their power in any way is being diminished. Here, all right, let's play this again. People should just listen to these words he's using. It's just, man. And this is stuff too. This is what the best part about this is, like, he thinks he's being so daring and hip and this and that.
Yeah.
Like, this is, Phyllis Schlafly's talk from 40 years ago.
Being aggressive, rough, violent. Everywhere a boy turns, he's met by forces wishing to domesticate and feminize him. Now, on the list of those threats, a mall Santa doesn't quite make the top 10, but it's a sad statement that the efforts are so pervasive at this point as to encompass even mall Santas. Here's the reality. Boys have a natural aggression, a natural tendency towards violence. This is good. It's who they are. It's who they were made to be. Now, you can't let those tendencies develop entirely on their own. All children must learn to be civilized, but you also can't suppress them or treat them as symptomatic of some kind of disease. The goal is to harness a boy's innate aggressiveness. Part of that process, an important part, maybe even the most important part for a kid, is through play. The boy pretends to be a superhero. He pretends to be a soldier, a police officer, a cowboy. Toy guns will often be involved in these kinds of games. He's learning that violence can be good, which is true. It can. But it has to be violence in service of good, to protect and defend. Heroic
This is
violence.
all works as a defense of
Sports also
Antifa, by the
play
way.
a crucial role here. Now, on the other end, if a kid gets caught up in movies, shows, games that are overly gory and nihilistic and not appropriate for his age, and is too exposed to that and fascinated by it, then he's going to start to learn the wrong things about violence, have the wrong relationship with violence, and that can have a very detrimental effect on his growth.
Video games.
And that's
not
why the goal is
society.
always to embrace who the child is, help him to harness his innate tendencies, and to guide him in the right direction, which means, yes, let him play with Nerf guns.
Mm-hmm.
Now, perhaps I've delivered a more serious analysis of the Mall Santa video than was necessary. But even so, the point remains. It is good for boys to have Nerf guns. And even better nowadays, because it means they're going to be on their feet, moving around, physically playing, rather than sitting on a couch and moving only their thumbs. So, for that reason, the Mall Santa is canceled.
Man, the Department of Defense
culture.
Department of Defense really messed up giving all this money to Call of Duty and these first-person shooters for propaganda purposes in the last few decades. They should have just been giving it all to Nerf guns because that's how you create a fighting force.
Yeah, those people really need to get on the same page.
That is exactly how you develop the shooter in Wisconsin, right? I mean, he's 17. Boys will be boys. He's running around playing with guns. Look, people want to give people Nerf guns, but the idea that a boy cannot develop properly without access to toy guns is
an interesting take.
It's an interesting take. It's insane. It's insane. You can have the boy do all sorts of other things. And I do think that there's a tendency for boys to be, a little bit more hyperactive than girls, at least in my limited experience with my children. I think some of that is a feedback loop and expectations. I think some of it is, boys tend to mature at a slower rate. But the idea that you need guns in which to channel this as opposed to anything else is just bizarre. And the idea that it's a bad message for any type of figure, particularly a Santa Mall, to in any way discourage the use of guns. It's just a bizarre, idea.
Well, he thinks that he's a vessel for the natural way of things, and this is how things should be, right? This is the left is oppressing you by putting all their social expectations onto you, when really what's so ironic is he's beholden to objects like Nerf guns to, inform his ideology. It's so influenced by culture, and he's unaware of it and ignorant about it. And so he thinks that's just how things are supposed to be. In the natural way of things, there was Adam and Eve, and then there was Nerf guns, right? It's all socially constructed, and you're a slave to it, and yet you're unaware of it.
Does he feel that if girls play with Nerf guns, they're going to become too masculine?
I was a huge tomboy as a kid, and I played with swords and I played with water guns and stuff. I wasn't really allowed to have Nerf guns, so.
Now, does that make it hard for you to go into the home because you're undomesticated?
Yeah, I'm never going to be able to cook a rotisserie chicken now that I had toy lightsabers and Excalibur or whatever.
Part feral.
Anyway, I think it's important to point out that Matt Walsh and his company are offering a gift to bring back masculinity, which is the Daily Wire Christmas ornaments.
Oh, right.
Oh my God.
I thought you were going to say more beard dye.
Oh my God. I really hope that I have a boy so that I can raise him to be super feminine. But maybe, I don't know, who cares about a Nerf gun? I'll get him a real gun. Violence is justified sometimes.
Yeah. Why didn't the mall Santa actually offer him one of those
BB
pocket
gun,
pistols?
air guns?
Come on.
Yeah, what a cuck.
But I love the idea that this is sort of like low hanging fruit, right? The idea that you can't have first of all, just never mind the argument about you're feminizing a boy. I don't even know what that means. But the idea that somehow the ability to handle a gun is
it says a lot about your masculinity.
This is parody level. This is a guy who must look in the mirror and just be I am just not measuring up to myself. I need to it's like saying if you deny them a Corvette, man.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's just that is such a self-own.
Yeah, and it's all wrapped up in this weird materialism. They've connected all of their conceptions of masculinity to socially constructed specific items. Doesn't that mean your masculinity is pretty paper thin?
Yes.
Gender theory to own the libs.
Can we see those? Can we see those Christmas ornaments again?
Yes. Sorry.
I love Clavin. Look at Clavin.
I love how
Martian
Shapiro...
even as a Christmas ornament.
Wow.
Yeah. Shapiro just looks like a standard Christmas elf.
Yeah, I think making Shapiro an elf kind of plays into our hands,
Yeah, no, the Shapiro one is actual size.
No, I
Michael Knowles is looking very masculine as well.
Oh, look at that. He's smoking a cigar, but it's a candy cane. That's what that cigar is also about, too. It's like, it is honestly like they should be hanging a sign around their necks saying, I am unsure of myself in terms of my manhood and that I'm not projecting enough strength. Please give me a cigar or let me handle a gun. I mean, it's just, it's honestly, it's like.
That's an important part of masculinity is feeling insecure and buying a gun to make up for it.
Particularly
like
in America going back
such
like
a
300
parody.
years.
Such a parody of itself. Let's play this. I don't know. Just look at this Katie Porter thread. Again, you know, I teased it in the first half of the show. The failure to message by the Democratic leadership is you know, something that I have been complaining about for a while. The failure to even do, you know, like obviously ideologically, I have problems with what the Democratic leadership is doing, but just in their sheer incompetence when it comes to just basic politics, it is incredibly evident as far as I'm concerned. But occasionally you get a moment where you get like the opportunity to show the alternate universe in which Democratic leadership could operate. We saw that the other day. Katie Porter said, you know, had an interview where she said, like, we shouldn't call this stimulus because this is about need. This isn't about like juicing the economy. This is about helping human beings survive in this instance. And then literally within 24 hours, Nancy Pelosi is out there going like, we don't need to do so much because Joe Biden's now president.
Yeah, and the vaccine's coming, and it's a
the
magic
vaccine's
bullet. Yeah,
like,
yeah. I supported. I said $1.8 trillion wasn't enough when I rejected Mnuchin's, but now $908 billion. That sounds great, and there's no check for people
so
in it.
untethered to the actual need by people that in 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, it all changes simply by who the name of the president is. Nobody's gotten any more dollars in their pocket. Nobody has any more access to food. Nobody has any more access to healthcare. Nobody has any more, just like less anxiety about what's going to happen in 4 weeks. None of that's relevant. The only thing that's relevant is the name of the president. In fact, it's not even the name of the president because he's not the president yet. It's just the idea that he's going to be president in 6 weeks.
Well, they've also got understanding, don't forget, which you could totally trade for food.
Well, and hopes and prayers. But that's the dichotomy and the sort of like the alternate universe you get in terms of messaging. Here is Katie Porter with another lesson on messaging. She writes, when I came to Congress, I knew I had responsibility to pull back the curtain for American people and expose corruption in real time. So I'm filling you in on Senator McConnell's attempts over the last 8 days to tank a bipartisan COVID relief bill. Okay, so be clear here, right? This is not ideological. I don't know where she stands on the bipartisan bill. I would imagine she would want something that was much more robust. I certainly do. You see here members of the Senate who are saying, I'm not going to vote for this. I want something that's more robust. But that's not what this is about. This is about making the Republicans pay a price for their obstruction, regardless of how they're obstructing. Go down. You may have heard that Democrats and Republicans have agreed upon spending a $900 billion bill to fund another round of small business loans, support hospitals and essential workers, help the 10 million people who lost their jobs through no fault of their own. Next. Everyone at the negotiating table, including Senate Republicans, has agreed to a compromise except one. Mitch McConnell is refusing to bring it to the floor unless it wipes away all COVID-related lawsuits that allege injury or death due to corporate negligence. Next. These lawsuits represent the worst of the worst examples of disregard for human life. Cases filed on behalf of nursing home patients and grocery store workers who died because the company in charge of them keeping them safe prioritized cutting costs over protecting them. Next. The same McConnell who said that President Trump is 100% within his rights to pursue baseless lawsuits alleging election fraud is now refusing to pass urgently needed relief unless it strips those same rights from the most vulnerable among us. This must be exposed. Just contemplate this message versus the message of we don't need to we don't need to pursue what we were pursuing before because Biden's there. The options on the table rhetorically from Nancy Pelosi to choose from to provide a message. And this stuff is I get it. It's this is sort of this is very much about just sort of political best practices as opposed to the actual substance that we're talking about. But the fact is that they blew that 6 months ago. And the fact that they can't even come back now and they still will not exact the price from the exact same behavior is just, it's shocking. The failure of Nancy Pelosi as just simply as practicing politics is just, it's stunning. It is stunning. And she is held to no account whatsoever. Again, tweet at, send letters, call your, if you have one of your Congress people is a member of the squad or Justice Democrats or the Progressive Caucus, tell them before you vote for Nancy Pelosi, get something.
Yeah.
Get a vote on Medicare for all is, seems,
well,
what
it's leverage do they have?
Well, the only leverage they have is in threatening to withhold their vote for her speakership.
I mean, what's the alternative? Hakeem Jeffries, he sucks too.
No, it is that it would become the Speaker of the House would become. They would just abstain, and the Speaker of the House would end up becoming. This is not even a leadership vote. This is abstaining and letting the Republicans attain the speakership, I guess, ostensibly.
Well, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, and what the belief in Washington, if they even are looking into why Pelosi is so unpopular, is that she's perceived as so liberal, right? That's what they genuinely think. That's kind of their default belief.
Psycho.
When in reality, one, she's not, and two, it's because she never makes her case. When she does, she is completely out of touch, and people see, if they pay an iota of attention, the naked political maneuvering of her not accepting Mnuchin and Trump's deal, and then now touting this bipartisan one. She comes off as a political animal and completely out of touch. And it would be fine to have someone with more progressive leanings as the Speaker of the House. I mean, Republicans are never afraid to have ideologues and true believers as their leaders. Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, etc. Those are not people in the center of the Republican Party, if that even exists anymore.
I'd be happy to have someone to her right be the leader of the Democrats, who is less adept at maintaining control and less ostensibly on the side of progressives. But here's another example. So the fact of the matter is that there haven't been many of these lawsuits that are in contention in this bill at all. That doesn't necessarily mean that they won't come later. I suspect in many respects that they will, because it takes a little while for those suits, unless they're sort of very, very explicit, like that Tyson one. Businesses, however, this is according to the Washington Post, have been filed over 1,300 lawsuits against insurers involving their business interruption, because, of course, the insurer's whole business model is always to never pay in these situations. We're going to collect and never, ever pay. There's also 1,000 lawsuits against local and state coronavirus restrictions. Okay, so this is what I would do. If I wanted to leverage this, I don't know if I would make this the actual table, but I would have somebody out there from the Democratic leadership going out there and saying, well, let's do this, Mitch McConnell. If you want to bar workers or consumers from suing corporations who have threatened their health, How about we sue people? How about we bar people who are suing to get rid of mask things, or corporations from suing insurance companies? Like, you use this as an opportunity to show whose side Mitch McConnell's on, even if Nancy Pelosi is not really on our side. Putting that aside, you still use it to demonize because certainly Republicans do that all the time. They pretend they're on the side of the worker. They're not on the side of the worker, but they go out there and they posture like they are. This is just like rudimentary politics. And they just seem incapable of doing it. Like, the best way for this to happen is for people to not understand that we even exist.
Well, has Pelosi said that she's against these corporate protections? Because it seems like the kind of thing that she would support, at least tacitly.
No, she says she is against them. And that's why, and there's, there's wide, the fact of the matter is that tort lawyers, like the ones that I would go visit in Vegas, are largely big donors to Democrats. Also, ideologically, much more aligned with them, at least in terms of what they're doing in practice. Because when you have underfunded regulatory agencies that don't have the ability to hold people to account, what happens is these tort lawyers end up doing a huge amount of the groundwork for what ultimately could be criminal violations, or even governmental suits, civil suits regarding, regulatory breaches. A lot of the stuff that we see in the context of any of the suits that the DOJ or state attorney generals took in regards to like the financial meltdown, like, malfeasance in the handling of state pensions, or in a lot of the stuff that we're seeing with the sales of OxyContin and opioids. A lot of that is happening from tort lawyers who are bringing cases, who are basically generating all of the evidence and the claims. And so they pursue it in a private court, and then you see attorney generals pursue it publicly in public cases, representing a different set of plaintiffs. And then sometimes with criminal charges that are based upon the information that's dug out of these civil things. So protection that they provide for corporations in other ways. This is just not one of the ways that Democrats traditionally do it. And there's also, and there's also just sort of the broader perspective of like, you don't want to bar citizens from getting some type of civil redress.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders had some good tweets about this. Apparently, there was a company where the bosses were taking bets as to who was going to die from COVID.
That was the Tyson case. That's the Tyson case.
Real nice.
Yeah. And that is one of the few suits, and certainly the most high-profile one that has been filed. Let's go to a 760 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. This is Amy from San Diego.
Amy from San Diego. Are you using a phone, or are you literally just yelling from San Diego? Because I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now, Sam?
No, I cannot, Amy.
Okay.
Can you get closer to your phone?
Yeah, I'm just talking.
There you go.
You know what? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. That's good. We hear you now. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to ask something about criminal justice reform. Sorry, there's like an echo, so I'm just going to hang up. Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Don't know what's going on with that. I don't think that's on our end. Calling from a 478 area code. Who's this? Where you calling from?
Good afternoon. This is Jeff from Florida. No, there's an echo.
Oh gosh, I guess it's all of our fault.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Way, man.
Hang on, I'm going to try and call back in. Stay right there. Gosh, Amy, I am so sorry. It was our fault.
If a veteran caller like Jeff can't figure it out, then you know it's on our end.
Yeah, Jeff, you there?
I am there. The echo is gone. Can you hear me?
Yes. Gosh, Amy, I'm sorry. Try and call back in. I'll keep an eye out for you.
Yeah, I heard that. I was baffled as well. And then the same thing happened to me. Hi, Majority Report, my most serious political daily podcast.
Jeff, how's your health? How's your kidney?
It is improving greatly. I drink water all day, every day. It's made all the difference. I feel not quite well enough to do a whole lot of physical labor, so I still feel a little bit useless. Just sitting at home all day, basically all I can do. So if people want to see the fruits of that, obviously I have a podcast, a stream at sisterdoes.com and Post Revolution, but I didn't really call this. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I wanted to say, and I've said it publicly many times, but I got so many messages of support and donations. I'm doing fine for now. Thank you so much, everyone. I can't say thank you enough. I'm good. The only thing I really wanted to talk to you about in terms of politics, though, was really mostly about Georgia. And this is a little bit maybe basic or whatever, but I watched Trump's rally down in Valdosta, which is down in the butt of the state. And that town is small. It's smaller than mine. And I live in what I think is a small town. Only 60,000 people in Valdosta. And I saw the debate, or at least the one debate, and I heard Ossoff talk for half an hour, basically unchallenged. And two things. I think Trump did, at least temporarily, a pretty good job of tying his fortune to the fortunes of those Senate candidates. I think as the election gets closer on the 5th, and it becomes clear that he's going to be leaving, that might break down. But the most interesting thing to me during the debate, and listen to Ossoff talk, and look at their messaging in Georgia right now, is it's pretty simple. If you want $1,200, vote for me. It really is kind of that basic. Ossoff repeated it many, many, many times. Warnock a little bit less in his appearance, but the thing is I think the only reason the Republicans are negotiating about a Senate bill at all is because David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler definitely need one.
Yep.
They're going to win. They're down in the polls right now. They're losing.
Yep.
Warnock's up by a sizable amount, in fact. And so, if they can't deliver anything to anyone, they're definitely stumped. And Ossoff and Warnock at least seem to know that. It seems to me a lot of the Democratic caucus's better members seem to realize that, and maybe that some of their others don't. If they really are in danger of losing those seats, I can't believe that that's actually a possibility. But
that's fascinating.
That is how it feels. Half the state that rents is behind on their rent by at least $2,000 or more.
Wow, that's in Georgia.
That's in Georgia. Yeah,
wow,
it's 46%.
I looked at the map of the U.S.
Really stopped here. Sorry, go ahead.
I looked at the map of the U.S. of where different percentages of people are behind on their rent, and it's really bad. Georgia's definitely up there.
That's fascinating.
And the thing is, we've stayed open, quote unquote, more or less this whole time. We did have a brief lockdown around the spring, or much earlier in the year, whatever. Time is an illusion now. But other than that, everything's been basically go ahead. And you know what? It doesn't fucking matter. Excuse me. But it doesn't matter in terms of the economy, because nobody has any money here, just like everywhere else. In fact, It's even worse. And our hospitals are overwhelmed. The other reason I don't want to go outside at all is I'm not feeling all that great at all right now.
Well, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. You should stay at home and take it easy. And particularly, if when you have an underlying condition like that, you don't want to go. You never want to get COVID, but you definitely don't want to get it in that type of situation, particularly with your kidneys. I can tell you that. That is, you got to be careful about that. Well, Jeff, listen, A, very glad to hear you're feeling a little better. B, great points on the implications of a stimulus or a bailout or a relief, or however you want to characterize what's desperately needed on the race on January 5th. it's sort of a Faustian bargain. But I guess, the bottom line is if Ossoff and Warnock win, there's no particular leverage right now, I guess, with the Republicans, except for salvaging that race. But if the Democrats, and then, I guess maybe there's slightly less leverage. But if the Democrats win, I don't know. It's a very tough place to be in. But I appreciate the call, Jeff. Feel better. Listen, I want to play this clip, and then we're going to get to Amy, because I think she's called back in on a 760 number. Amy, if you're there, hang on. But Jeff in Georgia just told us, and I had noticed that there was millions, I think we mentioned this yesterday, millions of Americans who are $5,000 or more behind on their rent. And Jeff in Georgia just told us that in Georgia, half of all renters are behind their rent by at least $2,000 in Georgia. That's a
and
stunning.
McConnell's still encouraging austerity, and
stunning
basically
figure.
we're not going to do anything.
And let's be clear. The rent moratorium imposed, or I should say the eviction moratorium imposed by the CDC runs out in December.
Yeah, there's no rent moratorium.
Not rent moratorium, the eviction moratorium.
Would be nice.
Imposed by the CDC runs out at the end of December. And so there is pressure. Apparently Mitch McConnell doesn't feel it on Perdue and Loeffler to deliver a stimulus. And here is a clip of protesters in Portland basically putting their bodies in between police attempting to evict people in Portland and succeeding. This is on Twitter from Ben Jenkowitz. Put this up. I mean, just imagine, like, I don't know, just the idea that, we're expending taxpayer dollars to kick people out of their homes.
Great use of resources.
Well, that is,
like Bernie was saying.
That's a primary purpose that the police serve, though. They exist to protect private property, and we are seeing a very clear example of that here. And it's one of the reasons why we need to shrink their budgets so that they can't do that anymore.
Yeah, Absolutely. This is structural priorities.
And
but there really was beauty in that. I mean, the fury with which the American people or the people in Portland were defending their neighbors. I mean, there's many ways that we can go in these times of crises. And one of the ways is that we could, go at each other's throats and demonize one another. And then there are ways like that where we link arms. So I found it, even though they were screaming obscenities.
Well, that's the thing. It's that, to be clear,
it was heartwarming.
It's not a question. It's not a question of fetishizing, the anger or the violence, but it is like, they are doing that in service of keeping a family in their house.
Yeah, I'm not trying to give it an Oscar.
No, I know. I just wanted to emphasize that point. Like
it's solidarity.
Yeah, and it's providing, it's like just helping your neighbor not be thrown out of your home in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, not that it should ever be justified, but the idea that that resources are being expended when we're talking about, like, we don't have money to get the vaccines out, and yet there is that money going to basically provide the opportunity for this rent. If it's that important that you could expend money for armed guys to go and throw this family out, then maybe it's that important that the government could step up in this instance and pay the rent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to say real quick, we need to put this in the context of the clip we played earlier in the week about how none of these cops actually live in these communities anyway.
Right.
So we have the state paying these goon squads essentially to come drag people out of their homes. You look at the 538 has this map that's really useful. Most police don't live in the cities they serve. And you look Portland all the way down here, Portland, Oregon. So some of the absolute worst. I mean, Minneapolis is just completely horrible. But yeah, Portland, fewer than, what is that, 25%.
So again, being paid by the tax
today,
dollars of those
Minneapolis
people
today,
and then taking it out.
incidentally, is I believe it's today. I think the city council is voting on cutting the police budget. It's not a huge amount that they're cutting it. I think it's like less than 10%. But it is encouraging to hear. There is, and we've talked about, I mean, it's obviously, again, necessary but insufficient. But there are pilot programs in at least 5 cities now, major cities, to enhance the, to offload stuff from the police's portfolio. And I mean, I don't know, who you would want to give the portfolio for eviction. How about like there not be eviction? Or, I mean, obviously there, you cannot have, people just deciding like, I'm not going to, leave this property, at least in my opinion. But
why not? Like,
well,
I think this is a very effective tactic because, look, you can, if people are standing up to their landlords and causing them problems and resisting eviction and resisting, landlordism in general, the landlords are going to have the giant real estate interests that own most of the housing stock in this country are going to have a lot more political power than just the tenants do when they say, you guys got to fix this. Either the banks can take a haircut or you can give people money to pay their rent.
I agree. But I mean, I don't think that, if Dave Rubin decides to stop paying his mortgage on his house, I'm not going to be, and I would be rather I find it a little bit disturbing to see people going and protesting to protect him from the bank. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think that, but I think your point is well taken that, if, on one end of the spectrum, there is, enough difficulty in enforcing in maintaining the value of their property by getting the cops to throw people out and basically enhancing their value, then maybe they turn around and find sort of a less, allow the corporations, somebody take a haircut, the banks take a haircut, like you say, or the government subsidize or whatever is necessary at that point. All right. I hope this is her. 760 area code. Amy?
Yes, this is me.
Amy, how's the phone sound?
It sounds good. No echo.
Okay. Thank you, Amy.
So my question was on criminal justice reform, as I was saying. And so I'm still in college and I'm deciding if I want to do, I want to be a lawyer, but I don't know what I want to go into exactly yet. But the one thing I've noticed online especially is that there's this longing for extremely punitive sentences based on certain cases that get extreme media. Like, I'm just wondering how do we go about, how do we go about getting less punitive sentences? Is it like a congressional issue, a judicial issue, both? So
I mean, some of it's statutory. Some of it is there's a perverse incentive for prosecutors to make a name for themselves, to build a political career by following certain. But you
Amy
need
Klobuchar, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, you need to have. You also need reform by lawmakers to make sure that there's not as many opportunities for these, prosecutors who are ambitious. There's also a movement out there, and we've talked to Daniel Nick. Help me out, Brendan.
Daniel Nickanian.
Daniel Nickanian. Thank you. Don't sound like you're so put out to just.
No, I wasn't. I was upset.
Daniel
that it took a little
Nickanian
while.
was talking about, like, there is a burgeoning, I don't want to overstate it, but reform movement amongst prosecutors. So you get someone like, Krasner in Philadelphia, and you have Boudin in San Francisco, and there are others around the country. I mean, so there is, at the very least, there is a nascent reform movement, which is good, because there really wasn't one, as far as I was aware of, in terms of prosecutors, at least an organized one in the past.
I was also, I was just thinking about that in the notes I wrote before I called in, that like DAs are important, and you talked about that. And it's just, I like the response, and I appreciate you letting me call back in.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it, Amy. Thanks for the call.
I just want to add one thing, which is, yes, I support reforms. I support progressive prosecutors. They're better than unprogressive prosecutors. But we also have to look at the incentives for mass incarceration and where they come from. And they're largely economic. Like Ruth Wilson Gilmore, radical geographer, did a study of mass incarceration in California and the economic role that prisons serve in some of these sort of disinvested communities and areas. In a lot of places, that's the business. And they had a surplus of land in the 60s and 70s, all sorts of economic incentives that go into this. Like, I think people need to get away from seeing mass incarceration just as a pure response to crime, and more as a response to, the financial needs of a system,
It's analogous to military bases in this country. And around the world, for that matter, is that there's a massive economic interest in it for the localities. Mm-hmm. There's also, as you see, the increasing privatization of prisons. It also becomes even more, not just in terms of like, hey, we're a business that's coming in and hiring 250 people. They're going to be guards. They're going to be cooks. They're going to be cleaning in our prison. But it's also, you have then corporate interests. Much of the immigration detention stuff has been driven by the privatization and the move by private prison companies to get into the immigration detaining business.
No, that is real, and it's disgusting. But the vast majority of prisons are still public. So we have to look at the economic reasons behind that as well. And
that's what I'm saying. It's regardless of whether it's a private business or not, it still is providing economic benefit to these,
But I'm also saying another economic reason is capital bosses benefit from having a surplus population, right? A reserve army of labor, people who aren't needed currently by the capitalist job market, but might be in the future if their needs change. Now, what do you do with this surplus population? You put them in prison to keep them from causing trouble. And that way you get to double dip twice, right? Because like we said, these states, the economies make money off of it, and capital benefits from having a surplus population. And it's not just like a passive warehousing of it either. Like, it actively creates the surplus population and upholds the racialized elements as well. So there are so many factors that go into mass incarceration that we need to look at.
Famously,
basically,
I just want to say quickly,
short of it, it's too many people are making too much money off it.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
In North Dakota, both the major universities are on the way eastern part of the state, NDSU and UND. And growing up, I was always told that's because Bismarck wanted the business of the jail in the center of the state for themselves. So that's why you have to go to the complete border for college there.
All right, guys. Good job today. Emma, Jamie, Matt, Brendan, well done. Folks, we will see you tomorrow.
Oh, sorry, Brendan, you need to take it.
Caught you by surprise, didn't I?
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want. know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth